On a completely ordinary weekday, Thomas came home, with whom I had not been married for very long, and immediately started telling me something extraordinary. He had received an offer for a 1-week business trip abroad. That meant that I would be staying alone in our house for the first time in years. Although I knew it was part of his job, the thought of being alone for so long made me nervous. Thomas packed his things, gave me a kiss, and left with a smile, promising to call me every evening. Suddenly, the house felt very big and quiet. The first few days passed quietly. I worked from home, watched some TV, and took long walks. But on the third evening, something unexpected happened. I was sitting on the couch with a cup of tea when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone and was curious and somewhat uneasy. When I opened the door, Jonas, Thomas's best friend, was standing in front of me with a friendly smile and a bottle of wine. "I thought I'd drop by," he said casually. "I know Thomas is away and wanted to make sure you're not alone." Jonas and Thomas had been friends since university and had an uncomplicated friendship. We had met occasionally, but I had never spent much time alone with Jonas. "Thank you, that's really kind," I replied and let him in. We sat down together, drank wine, and talked about work and mutual friends. The conversation flowed surprisingly easily, and I laughed more than I had in the past few days. Jonas was charming, and that evening I noticed how attentive he was. After 2 hours, I felt a change in the air between us. Jonas looked at me more intensely than usual. It wasn't uncomfortable, but different. I quickly changed the subject and eventually told him I needed to go to bed. He thanked me for the evening and left without hesitation. The next morning, I woke up with a strange feeling. The evening with Jonas wouldn't leave me alone. I tried to convince myself that it was nothing. I had simply enjoyed the company of a friend. But a voice in my head constantly reminded me of the tension between us. I tried to focus on work, but thoughts of Jonas kept creeping in. Eventually, I called my friend Lena and told her about the evening. She immediately asked interestedly, "What happened?" I answered cautiously, "It was just a feeling, something intense." Lena thought for a moment and then said, "That's tricky, he's Thomas's best friend." I agreed, but deep down I wasn't sure. The rest of the day was filled with distractions, but Jonas's visit wouldn't leave my mind. In the evening, I received a message from Jonas. "It was nice last night." I thought for a long time about how to reply and finally wrote, "It was nice to have company." His response came quickly, "I was thinking of stopping by again tomorrow." Part of me wanted to cancel out of fear of the unknown, but another part didn't want to endure loneliness any longer. I agreed. When Jonas came the next evening, he brought Asian food. We sat down at the kitchen table. The atmosphere was tense. Every glance suddenly had more meaning than before. During the meal, I suddenly asked a question. "Have you ever thought about what it would be like if we weren't both in relationships?" Jonas's answer hit me unexpectedly. Yes, there is something between us. It felt like a turning point. We had spoken about something that would have been better left unsaid. Finally, I said firmly, we need to end this before it goes any further. I love Thomas. Jonas nodded sadly. We both knew we had to keep our distance. After this conversation, I felt relieved and sad at the same time. I knew it was the right thing to do, but the thought of Jonas remained in my head. When Thomas came back, I felt guilty for being close to another man. Despite my efforts, memories of Jonas remained present. One evening, Thomas asked, "Is everything okay with you? You seem different." I weakly replied, "It's just unusual to be alone for so long." I tried to focus on our relationship, but thoughts of Jonas kept creeping in. A few weeks later, I received a message from Jonas, "Hope you're doing well." This simple question brought back all my feelings. I knew I shouldn't reply, but ultimately I couldn't resist the temptation and wrote back, "Yes, but we must say our final goodbye." Jonas' response came quickly, "I understand." It felt bittersweet. We closed a chapter. In the following days, I found peace in my life with Thomas. Memories of Jonas gradually faded like a distant dream. One evening, Thomas hugged me and said, "It's nice to have you back with me completely." In that moment, I realized that my love for him was strong enough. I now knew some temptations are tests for our relationships, and the decision not to act had helped me preserve my marriage. So I began a new chapter with Thomas, secure in the knowledge that our love was the most important choice. But how would the casual friendship with Jonas and me continue, and would Thomas and Jonas remain friends? These seductive fantasies keep coming up. Thoughts and film-like scenes that I shouldn't actually have. Forbidden thoughts. Would they fade and then disappear for good, or would they break out so that I could no longer hold back? Suddenly I heard an inner voice inside me say, "Once is not once,